Okay, so I wanted to do a video on CMEs and EMPs and just give you kind of my thoughts and also read to you a question that I sent to my friend Roy, who's an electrician, and he's very knowledgeable about some of these things, and I trust his judgment. So we'll get into that in just a second. But first, if you don't know what a CME or an EMP is, let me just quickly explain that to you so you're not completely in the dark here. A CME is also called a coronal mass ejection, and it's something that the sun, can give off at times, when there's destabilization on the sun's surface, these things are easily observable. The biggest one we ever had was back in 1859. It was called the Carrington event, and that event started some fires in some places because we had limited technology back then, basically telegraph lines, and because of that, it started a few fires in a few places. And so it was noted by, I believe, a scientist called Carrington. That's why it's called the Carrington event. He observed it through a telescope. It wasn't NASA or anything like that, all you flat earthers out there. This was actually observable, testable, demonstratable science. You could see with your own two eyes. Now, EMPs and different CMEs happen from time to time. We haven't had any big, giant Earth-directed CMEs in a long time. Suspicious Observers channel is a great channel to check out, for daily activity for that. Now, EMPs. I was first made aware of EMPs back, I think it was the movie called Broken Arrow. It was starring John Travolta and Christian Slater, and the whole point of the movie is John Travolta is trying to steal a nuclear weapon, and Christian Slater is trying to stop him. And in the movie, a nuke goes off in the desert, and they know what time it's going to go off. And right before it goes off, all the bad guys are driving in their Humvees, and they stop and they turn off their Humvees in order to avoid the EMP, the electromagnetic pulse that a nuclear weapon emits when it goes off, when it detonates. Electromagnetic pulse, EMP. And they turn their vehicles off in a way to avoid the EMP frying all the electronics in the vehicle so that the vehicles remain drivable. Is this true? Is this scientific? Does this really happen? There's not a lot of data out there to talk about this because back at the advent of nuclear weapons, most things weren't, advanced circuitry, and we didn't have, there's just not a lot of data to know whether or not certain things are going to survive an EMP when they detonate, when a nuclear weapon detonates. And so there is theory out there that they have these high altitude nuclear weapon detonators that can go off and completely fry cities of all their electronics. Again, something that has not been demonstratable, testable, provable, observable as of yet completely. There's lots of theories and lots of small tests, but on a wide scale, we just don't have a lot of data. So a lot of people, in trying to prepare for these things that we don't know may or may not happen, they'll say, well, we can come up with these Faraday cages, and there's lots of videos on YouTube on how to make your own Faraday cage. Okay, small ones, big ones, whatever. Lots of videos out there show you how to do that. And so you can watch all those if you want to on your own time. Pretty easy to make, simple. You don't need a lot of money. You don't need a lot of construction. They're pretty simple to make, Faraday cages. And what these Faraday cages do is to protect your sensitive electronics, maybe laptops, maybe cell phones, maybe, I don't know why you'd buy a cell phone because if the towers are going to, cell phones will be useless, but radios, things like that, things that may come in handy to have, post, collapse, okay, if an EMP goes off. So thinking about all this, I sent Roy, who's my electrician, who helped me on my solar build when I did my major upgrade here. And so I trust his judgment. He seems to be very knowledgeable in a lot of things. And I just asked him, let me read what I asked him, and then we'll go through his answer, because I thought the answer was fantastic, and I'm like, oh, I ought to read that on a video to my patrons. So here it is. Question: could you ground out a house adequately enough to protect everything inside against an EMP if it had a metal roof? If that's a stupid question, feel free to call me an idiot. That's what I texted him. Let me repeat the question part again, okay? Could you ground out a house adequately enough to protect everything inside it against an EMP if it had a metal roof? So this is his question. This is his answer to my question. He says, I think it's a great question. And yes, I absolutely think a well-grounded metal roof would be a substantial shield from an EMP. A metal frame building with a metal roof might do a better job, but even a wood frame building with a grounded metal roof would absorb most of the energy. In all reality, I do not think off-grid homes have much to worry about. It's the grid that will have the issue. Here's why. This whole nation is crisscrossed with multi-strand copper net that is ungrounded. When an EMP wave hits that net, it will be thousands of miles of grid that will generate voltage. That voltage will be transformed through the system eventually and into homes. Off-grid just doesn't have enough of a net to catch much energy. Most electronics is powered through a voltage-regulated power supply that can often take 240 volts. I think an off-grid home will have a voltage bump of a couple volts, whereas a grid home will likely be hundreds of volts. I'm even skeptical about cars having issues. The really fine small nanometer chips being used now in cars probably will die, or will probably die. But the earlier 90s and early 2000s had much larger components. Chip architecture had much larger components, and chip architecture was larger. Chip voltages higher. I think they will likely be fine. It makes sense. To me, all that makes sense. And so I've often wondered to myself, like, is this even something? Because we really don't know a lot. When I watch these videos and when I read things online about EMPs and CMEs and the complete and total disaster that will follow one of these events, what I read, my mind says, Zach, this is all speculation. There's very little actual data, observable, testable, demonstratable data that these articles and these videos talk about when they talk about the end of the world happening after an EMP. So, I don't know. I'm open to interpretation. Here's what I'm doing. Okay, so just now we know that, and okay, we're just trying to process all of this. What am I doing? I'm going to build a Faraday cage, a small one, to house maybe a trash can size Faraday cage that I can put some electronics in, that I can put a smaller solar generator in, enough to be able to run some communications. And I'll have, listen, if my big one goes out, I may put a small cage around it. I'm going to ground up my metal roof. I'm getting ready to put a metal roof on my main house. I have a metal roof over this part of the building right now that I'm in, and I'm going to ground everything out. Okay, my home, because I am an off-grid home, my home is a modular home, and my home is on piers, and the frame for the bottom of my home is completely steel. Okay, it's a steel frame that it sits on, and that it actually is grounded with each section of my home has a 3-foot grounding rod, multiple, like 4 or 5 times sunk in. I think it's 4 times sunk into the ground, 3 feet deep, and it's attached to a big aluminum strap that I think that holds everything down. And so that could act as grounding, but I'm going to ground it further. I have my roof will be grounded to ground rods because I'm building a new grounding system because of my communications. I'm building a ham and GMRS and CV station here. So that will all be grounded, and my roof will be grounded to that system as well. So I think I will be okay, and everything inside here will be okay if an EMP took off, over this country. Not to mention we're not exactly over a, strategic blast area anyway. So I think any EMP that went off, even a high altitude one over a city, would probably have the least of amount of effect over our area. I don't know. Again, all this is theory. Feel free to comment and tell me why you agree or disagree. But I mean, the reason why you do these over strategic areas is because you want to have the biggest, impact from the airburst EMP over that particular area. So again, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to build a Faraday cage for some things that I just want to make sure I have if everything went bad. And then I'm going to try to make my home into a Faraday cage and just try to ground everything out so that if any energy does come through on basically any wavelength, I can capture as much of it as possible and send it to ground. I know this is a lot. Probably a lot of people don't think about this stuff. They're like, man, Zach, if it gets that bad, do I really care? Maybe. But we're living in the world right now today that it's like we're headed for war. There's no doubt in my mind we're headed for war. We are, when times like this have happened throughout history. War follows, absolutely. And I don't want my kids going to war. I mentioned that in the video that I did recently on YouTube. So I'm just trying to figure things out. And I'm grateful for people like Roy who are knowledgeable about stuff like this, that I can bounce ideas off of them. And there's other people out there as well who know things about certain things, and I pick their brain and be like, hey, what about this? What about that? Lots of things. Always be learning. That's your best preparedness, is your attitude and how you look at life. And are you always learning? Are you always trying to do things and try to better yourself and prepare for what life may throw your way? Because I'm telling you right now, when it comes to life, pain is a requirement. Pain is a requirement. Suffering is optional. All right, leave it at that. Hey, check out our merchandise over at teespring.com. A lot of you patrons are still buying some of our shirts. I try to, if you have gotten these books, I have a lot of you guys who are on your game and you're like, yeah, I'm downloading these and I'm printing them off. Fantastic. If you haven't done that yet, when an EMP happens, you won't be able to go to the cloud to get your PDF. It'll be gone. Okay. So make sure you print these off. These are your drugstores. This is your doctor. This is everything you need to know. Okay. You need to get these and get them hard copied like yesterday. Okay. Because if an EMP happens today, it is too late. Leave a comment below. Patrons, I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, talk to you guys soon. Bye. Have you ever gone to a health food store and seen all those small bottles of probiotics in your cooler section? Man, can they be pricey. Are you really getting all you need to improve your gut health from those expensive bottles? How viable are they? Most of those products claim to give you between 8 and 15 strains of gut-healthy healing bacteria. Think of each strain of bacteria as a different factory in your gut. Each factory is responsible for breaking down that food in its own way. The more factories you have, the more the food is broken down and the easier the food is absorbed and digested by the body. A 2018 study published by the National Library of Medicine shows that one fermented head of cabbage can produce up to 114 strains of beneficial bacteria. That's a lot more food factories than you're getting from that expensive pill bottle. And that's just cabbage. Imagine the probiotics when you add garlic, onions, pepper, and more to that ferment. PerfectPickler.com and its home fermentation kits provide you with everything you need to get started making your own gut-healthy food factories from the comfort of your own kitchen. PerfectPickler.com even provides a jam-packed recipe book with many of our kits. Visit PerfectPickler.com and start fermenting your own veggies to begin your journey to better gut health. That's PerfectPickler.com.
Hey guys, did you know you can become a patron of an American Homestead? They get access to private videos, and we send them gifts from the homestead that we make here on the homestead. And we also enter our patrons into special giveaways that are only available to them. And before you go, please check out these other great videos. Go ahead, click. Oh wait,